This is a short tutorial on how to enter scores from a content exam test into a database. Every program has their own database and their own tests. This is the database for the test 206 for EDEC, which is early childhood. I'm also going to have two screens open, so let me minimize the screen for now. And I have open the Excel spreadsheet that has the scores that I'll enter. So let me minimize this one as well. I'll place them side by side. And let me go up, scroll up on this. Here are the ID numbers for the students, but you're going to see some that say 999999, however many nines. The same with 8. That's because the students are not active and I could not get their ID numbers. So we have to enter something in because every student in the database has to have an ID number. So the first thing we're going to do is, let me talk about the database. This is a table. I'm going to open it up. This is where all the information is stored. All the information from everything for this database is stored. And here are the students, student names, always with last name, comma, first name. So it's in one field. And here are the ID numbers. So I'm going to sort this from A to Z. So the first thing that needs to happen is that we need to look up every student here that has a 9999 number and see if we can find them in the database already. So for example, Johnson Jahila. And as you can see, I have one Johnson, which is Kashmira. So I do not have that person in this database. But every number that's a 99999, I think it goes through 9999994, needs to be looked up, and then you'll type the correct ID number on the spreadsheet and save the spreadsheet. So that's the first part. I'm going to close this down. That's how you close down. Be very aware of where the X's are to close out. This X, which I have occasionally clicked on by mistake, takes you completely out of the database. This one takes you out of whatever little tab you have open here. Right now I have table 1 open. It's the only table. And so that's what I want to close out, not the Access database. Do I want to save the changes? Yeah. I just alphabetized it. That's the only change I made. The other thing that you'll be working with in here are forms. There are 3 forms. All of these other objects you will not be working with. That's what I will work with. So there's the entry form for students who have not been entered into the database. First, they must be entered into the database before you can enter their content exam scores. So I should have addressed that. So not only are you looking up the students with 9999 numbers, you also need to make sure that the students are not already in the database. So this is alphabetical and these are alphabetical. So look those up. The good news is, except for the 999 numbers, this database will not let you enter someone else in twice because it goes by the ID number and there's only one entry allowed per ID number. So I'm not going to look through here to see the duplicates to see who's entered, but you can do that. So let me close this down again. You will never actually enter data into this table. All data entry is done through the forms, but it puts data into the tables. The reason for that is that when you're working in Excel, You can sometimes press the enter key after you've entered data, and you'll end up on a line below, which is for someone else, and you can enter the data incorrectly. You can enter data for one student into another student's records. The forms prevent you from doing that. So here we go. I'm going to enter this first person. So here, I'm going to copy the number. You can also type it in, but there's the number, and there's this check that you can see that popped up. You entered this number as the student ID number. Is this correct? I copied and pasted it, so you're going to say yes. But if you had typed it in, you would want to check that it's correct, because everything is based on the student ID number, so that must be correct. So I'm going to type Brooks Jessica. I do not have a middle initial. I do have the date of, no, I don't have the date of birth. We don't have this information, so you don't have to put it in. All we really need is the ID number and the name with last name, comma, space, first name. So I will click Save, and I will close this.
Now that Jessica Brooks has been added to the database, we can enter her content scores in the CONT Content 206 entry form. So I'm going to double click on that to open it. It asks for the student ID number. We just copied that, so I can paste it in there. Click OK. The very first thing to look for is to make sure that here's your ID number, here's the name of the person you're entering for. So you should always double check to make sure that you're actually entering the data in for the right person. So this is Jessica Brooks, and that's the person for whom we are entering the data, so we're good. There's a lot more to this form, so I'm going to move that over so you can see more of it. Jessica passed on the first time, so we don't need all of this. All of this is for failed scores, because we do have to enter all of those in. The date that the student first attempted this test, if you look on your spreadsheet, is 8/25/2020. You don't enter the date the same way it is on the spreadsheet. It is actually 08/25/2020. If the person had taken the test numerous times, like unfortunately this person did, you would have to look through and find the earliest date. So here we have 2020 dates, here we have 2019 dates. You would have to find the very earliest date. So in this case, for this person who is Taylor McNeil, this is the earliest date that Taylor took the test. But since Jessica only took it one time, that's the first time that she took it. And the latest result is pass. You're going to get scores, and you'll get updated scores periodically, and whatever the latest result is what you'll choose for that. P is for pass. The number of attempts to pass, in this case, she passed it on the first time, so we put a 1 there. And you complete this field only after the student has passed the test. If they're still trying to pass the test, like the person in the spreadsheet that I just showed you, Taylor McNeil only has failed scores. She has no passing score. So you will not complete this field until the person has actually passed the test. The pass date is going to be the same 08/25/2020 as the first time that she took this test. And now we need all of the scores. So I'm going over here to the spreadsheet, and I'm going to hide this column. We don't need it. These are all students who took the same test. They all took the early childhood test, so I don't need to know that. So I'm going to hide this column. I didn't explain that. I clicked on the top of the column where the letter is, right click, and then you can see hide, but I don't want to hide this one. I'm going to scroll over a bit, and now I have the name, and I can see all the test scores. So this one is the overall. This is subscore 1, subscore 2, subscore 3, subscore 4. So I'm going to type all of those over here. So that's 256 for the overall score, 278 for the subscore 1, 239 for subscore 2, 248 for subscore 3, 278 for subscore 4. There's one more important thing that you have to do for every record, even for students who only pass and have no failing scores, is that if they did not fail at all, type a 0 in there. Something important about this field is that for every time you enter failed scores in for a test, here's failed 1, here's failed 2, here's fail 3, here's fail 4, fail 5. You keep track of the number of times that the student fails. So if I complete all 5, then I have to put a 5 there because they failed 5 times. For the student who failed 8 times, you would type the 5 in for the ones that you have completed, and then you would go back, and when you have the ability to enter the other failed scores, then you would update that number to 8. But every time you get additional scores, and if they're failed scores, unfortunately, then you would keep changing that number. This number has to reflect the exact number of times that you've recorded failed scores. And now we are going to save this record, and it's complete. So click Save. And that is it for now. So I will go up here, not to this X at the very top, but to the second X down here that is level with my little tabs, the form tab that I have open, and I'm going to close that. And this navigation pane I'm going to open back up, because that's how you would get to your forms. I would suggest that you enter all of the students in with the entry form so that they're all in there, and then enter the scores into the second data entry form for the content exam. And that is all I have for now.